man. Like, have we met before? Because I have the feeling that we have actually met before.
Very, very briefly, my band once opened for Red Helen in Durban.
Ah, cool, cool. Who are you jamming with?
Thorns of Ivory at the time.
Yes, I remember that. I remember that. I would imagine that was probably at Winston, I would imagine.
Yes, 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 yes.
Nice
That
one.
was we've had a whole lineup change since then, for the better
Okay.
at least. So things are great. I still remember seeing Ash doing sound for you guys and being so stoked to see him.
Oh yeah, dude. Oh, dude. And Ash is a beast of a front of house engineer, man. It's like whenever we have that guy mixing for us, it's like I always know we're being taken care of in the best possible way, you know. And also, he's just a fantastic dude, so that's always a good thing. And I remember that because that must have been our album launch tour, if I remember correctly. Because I remember
Yes,
Ash was mixing
yes, it
for us
was.
on that. Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Ash is a beast behind the desk.
Because I was originally from Joburg and I had seen you guys a couple of times that side.
Cool.
And so I remember when the guys were like, "Hey, we've been given an opportunity to play with Red Helen." I was like, "Oh, fuck yes, let's go." I was actually at a work function that day when we got asked because we were asked like on the day to play with you guys.
Sure,
And
sure.
I was at a work function. I got a phone call and I was like to my colleagues like, "Cheers, I'm out.
Oh,
Goodbye."
dude, I think I remember that. I think it was a thing of like one of the other bands had to pull out last minute or something went wrong. And then like we had to try and find another band to jam with us that day. And then you guys were available. I think it was something to that effect. But I'm stoked you guys got to jam, man. That's awesome, dude. I definitely remember you guys and you guys were awesome.
Things have improved greatly now, but I'm glad to hear that. I'm really glad that you thought well of us at the time because there was a lot of work to be done there.
Oh, dude, it's like it's all good, man. At the end of the day, it's like it's that's part of the fun of this music thing, right? Is like seeing where you've come from and seeing where you've gone. And it's like I feel like all of us can like, it's like if you a couple years later, if you can't say like, oh wow, you should see us now. It's like we've gotten so much better. It's like then you're probably not doing it right. I mean, it's like you should always be striving for improvement and for growth and like to do what you do, that much better. So it's like I'm happy to hear that either way. That's great. And if I remember correctly, dude, that Winston show was crazy. Like I think out of the entire tour, because if I remember correctly, it's like on that tour we did 4 or 5 dates around the country. It was like I think we did 2 shows in Joburg, then a show in Pretoria, Durban, and Cape Town. And I remember that Durban show at Winston being like freaking nuts. Like it just being like super crazy and like bodies falling everywhere. And like it was just awesome. I had so much fun.
Yeah, that show got out of hand. It was actually a hell of a lot of fun. It's a pity the Winston's gone now.
I've heard. I'm sad to hear that, man. It was always a cool. We always used to call it like a lovable shithole. You know what I mean? It's like it was such a crap but awesome venue at the same time. It's like it just had a vibe. It had an energy about it. And that's often I think the thing that happens right with live shows. It's like it's usually the venues and the places that like you least expect to be the most fantastic to play that often land up being the most fantastic to play. The one thing I'll say about the Winston though is never ever ever use their house microphones because those things were nasty. Like that was like Winston single-handedly was the reason I went and actually bought my own microphone eventually because I was just like I can't be using house microphones if they look like they have like biltong
I
hanging out
actually
of the
think I
grill. Like,
remember you making like a Facebook post about this,
I
about
think
having
so.
your own mic. I actually I remember seeing you make a post about this actually, of like having your own mic. I
Oh,
was like,
dude.
oh, that's cool.
And you know what's funny, man, is I am like, and I'm not sure how many people outside of my band and my family and people know this, but I'm like a hectic germaphobe. So it's like the fact that I didn't have my own microphone for so long, like I'll never understand that. It's like I don't know how I was using house mics. I mean, for the couple of years that I did, it's just like because it just yeah, it grosses me out, man. I remember we played a show and the band that played before us was like a ska punk band, and the dude was just like spitting all
No.
over the microphone and like yelling, and like there was just I remember getting this mic and it was like dripping afterwards, and I was like, why am I doing this to myself? Like I really need to buy my own mic. And fortunately now I own two, so it's like I have a backup and my current one. So when the next time we do get to play,
You were your own worst enemy.
yeah, 100%, dude, 100%. And like I said, I get so easily grossed out by like germs and that kind of thing. So I don't know how I survive. But I mean, there's also that factor of like part of the beauty of like a metal punk or rock show is the fact that it's dirty and it's grimy and it's sweaty and it's like, everyone's like holding on to everybody and like falling over everybody and like we're moshing and picking each other up and all that stuff. It's like that's definitely part of the culture as well. So I feel like even as a germaphobe, it's like you just there comes a point where it's like it's actually just part of the vibe is letting that go and enjoying it, right? Enjoying those environments, if that makes sense.
Like it's definitely like a culture shock when you first get involved with it.
Yeah, sure.
I remember my first metal gig being like completely like confused as to what was going on. And like you always hear about it, you always see like shows, but there's nothing like quite like actually going to a metal gig for the first time.
Oh, totally, dude, totally. I mean, I still remember my first ever like local metal gig that I went to back in the day, and just being like, like being floored by it, and like loving every second of it, and like being like, that's what I want to do and that's where I want to be. It's like I want to be the guy that's on that stage, you know. It's like I think the first major level metal show that I ever went to was when Metallica played in South Africa for the first time. And it was like, obviously it was Metallica and Seether. I think it was the first time Seether had played South Africa in like, I think almost a decade at that point. And which I'll never forget, because I'll never forget the way the crowd, like when they got on that stage, like the crowd just went absolutely crazy. It's like, to this day, I don't think I've ever experienced that level of like push as soon as a band got on stage, not even for Metallica. And I think it's just because everyone was so proud that it's like, those are our boys up there, like opening for the biggest metal band in history, like that's fantastic. And that was the first big international one. But I remember going to like the very first local metal show that I ever went to, and it was a festival at Sundowners in Alberton. And the first band that was getting on the stage was a band called Your Name in Neon. And I remember Jake, their vocalist, like sound checking and screaming into the microphone and doing his thing with his voice, and hearing that and being like, oh shit, that's awesome. Like that, I need to learn how to do that. It's like, that's what I want to do. And then watching them play and being like, yeah, I want to be up on that stage 100%.
It's so interesting that you mention Your Name in Neon because you're the only person that I've ever spoken to in like the 200 and something episodes of the show who's actually mentioned them. Now
Wow.
they were gone long before I got involved in the scene. They were
Oh,
like
wow. Okay.
I found them as a result of this, because obviously we do a lot of like looking into bands and those kind of things. So like I got drawn into a lot of like the history of like South African alternative music, and that's how I ended up finding them and being
Fantastic.
amazed at, like that they existed. And
Yeah,
you're the
dude.
first person who's actually spoken to who's actually seen them, which is cool.
Oh, dude, I love that band, man. And Gavin, the guitar player, is still somebody that I chat to on Facebook every now and then, and that kind of thing as well. And like, I mean, I'm. That's the funny thing, dude. Is like, I'm still such a huge fan of like all the bands that the South African bands that came before us. It's like the previous generation of bands. It's like I'll often find myself going through like the rabbit hole of listening to just all the bands that I used to go and watch at, like, Cool Runnings back in the day, and Sunnies, and like all that kind of stuff, and like the old school festivals. And like I'm still as much a fan of all that old school like South African rock and metal as what I've ever been. And obviously it's like there's certain things in the way that like the scene has improved. Like certainly like music production has improved, and like certain aspects the songwriting's improved and all that jazz. But like there was just such a cool feeling within the South African metal scene between like say like 2007 to like 2010 2011, somewhere around there. There was just so many interesting bands, man. And it's like what was really cool is I kind of felt like as years went by, um we started getting to the thing where like certain portions of the scene could be kind of isolated from one another. Like you could have a death metal show or a black metal show or a metalcore show or a post-hardcore show or whatever. But between 2008 and 2011, most festival lineups were like a complete mashup of different bands. So you could have like a black metal adjacent band like Warthane playing on the same stage as Your Name in Neon, playing with the guys from Facing the Gallows back in the day with Brian on vocals. And like it's like you could have all these completely different bands like Hey Let's Burn Paris and Erebus and Devil Speak and like and Dean Crescent and everybody like playing these festivals together. And I loved that growing up, that it was like all these completely vastly different genres all sharing the stage together, and the vibe at the shows were fantastic because of it. So but like I said, I'm still very much a fan of like the old school like South African like rock and metal scene. It's like I'll still jam Pestroy and 16 Stitch and The Narrow and all those dudes. By the way, I talk a lot, my dude. So it's like if you need to cut me off, by all means, don't even stress.
Dude, it's all content. It's perfect. If you
Awesome.
took, that's perfect. I feel like I missed the glory days like of the South African alternative music scene. Like 2007, I was in grade 7. I didn't even know I wanted to be a musician.
Sure.
I didn't even know South African bands existed at that point in time. And then until I started playing guitar and wanting to get involved in music. And funny enough, like I joke about this a lot, but the first local band that I ever saw was Prime Circle. and I didn't even know they were a
Oh,
local
dude,
band.
nothing wrong with that, man. Nothing wrong with seeing Prime Circle, dude. Those guys are awesome.
They were, and I hear so many stories about like that era that you're talking about that make me so envious that I wasn't a part of it. And being a part of it now, especially now like a big part of Sludge is to try and help breathe life into it, to have people like hear the stories of these artists. And
Totally, dude. I mean, look at like, I do find that it is a trend with the scene that it's like, it happens in waves. It's like you go through periods of time where the scene is busy and it's thriving and there's like tons of new bands and new musicians and like the younger generations coming in and doing their thing. And then you go through times where it kind of tapers off a little bit and things quieten down a little bit, and then they start ramping up again and coming into it. So, obviously I'm here in the United States, these days, so it's like I'm not as plugged into what's happening in the SA scene at the moment with regards to new bands and that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it's like if it's in a slump at the moment, it's just an anticipation for the fact that it's gonna take off again in the next couple of years. It's like it always happens in waves like that, which is super cool.
I feel like it's currently like in one of those rises because now
Awesome.
the Durban music scene has been dead for a while, but I'm seeing so many new faces. Like at gigs, I'm seeing so many bands that I
Oh,
don't
that's
recognize,
fantastic.
new bands and shit. And I've been so stoked about it to see new faces at shows because the Durban scene is like really small and like tight knit.
Sure,
And
sure.
like there's like you can go watch a lineup of like six bands and each band shares like three members. So, and that was something that was happening for a while, and there's like just a whole bunch of new blood in the scene, which is fantastic.
That's awesome, dude. I think that's very cool, dude. I mean, it's like even with us, dude, like thinking back to like the old Red Helen, like before, Red Helen sort of got rolling the way that it did. It's like all of us were like playing in bands together and other bands and like sharing members and like, I think that's part of the fun thing about like an emerging scene and an emerging like, how do I put this? It's like the the community factor of the music scene is one of the beautiful things about the music scene. You know what I mean? It's like I love the fact that it's like when you're part of a music community, it's like it is just that it's a community. It's like this group of people that play music together, love music together, want to experience music together, and and naturally there's going to be this cool cross pollination where like certain guys are going to be playing for multiple bands, and then that means that like when stuff happens where somebody for whatever reason leaves a band and wants to go do something different for a little while or has other priorities and that kind of thing, that somebody from like a neighboring band that you know and love already joins up, and then eventually it becomes this thing where you kind of it kind of funnels down into like a weird supergroup in a way where it's like this this great group of musicians that land up in the same thing but in the same group together. But like the beauty of music, dude, is the fact that it's a community, and I think that's an absolutely fantastic thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've made some of like the best friends of my life through the music
Same, man,
community.
same.
Like honestly, it's yeah. There's no other feeling quite like it. I like how you've worded that.
Yeah, man. It's and that's one. I'll be honest with you. That's one of the tough things about like coming to a new part of the world, right? Especially for me as somebody who was in the South African music scene, since I was like 13. So it's like that's when I first started going to shows and hanging out with people and meeting people. And I mean, I've played besides Red Hidden, I've played in a number of bands and been involved for some time. And it was very weird coming to another part of the world when immigrating and walking into like a gig this side and being like, I know nobody. It's like this is kind of weird that it's an entirely new community and I don't know anybody in the scene. Especially coming from an environment like SA where I knew so many people in the scene. So which is kind of cool in one way, because it's kind of cool being in a new environment and like having new people to meet and hang out with and that kind of thing. But it's also very sad in a sense where it definitely made me appreciate even more so the friendships and the relationships that I'd built with people, over the last 15, 16 years in South Africa in the music scene.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. Like it must be so, like you said, it must be so weird. Like pretty much there would be no venue that in South Africa that you could walk into where you wouldn't know at least someone.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Which I consider a great privilege, dude. I consider that a great privilege.
How has the music scene been that side? Like I'm assuming you've been going to gigs, you've been watching bands. What has been your experience of that side so far?
Sure, sure. So look, the last year's been an interesting year for my wife and I, just getting on our feet and figuring things out. And, it's like immigrating, as much as it's a very, very exciting thing and a very cool thing, it can also be very, very challenging in many ways. So we've been getting on our feet. So I haven't really been as plugged in as I would have liked to have been. But that said, though, I have been very fortunate to, see some of my favorite bands ever live, in the last year. So it's like we saw Slipknot and we saw Killswitch Engage and we saw Korn and
Oh,
we saw Stained and we saw like a whole bunch of these bands. We got tickets to see August Burns Red and The Devil Wears Prada in February, which we're super excited about. And I've gone to a couple local gigs as well, and befriended a couple people in the scene this side. I mean, to be totally honest with you, where I live I live in South Florida, so about 3 hours south of Orlando. There's not as big of a music scene down here as what there is in like other parts of the United States, but it's like a weird little. The more we're here, as I guess is true with any place, it's like it's almost like an onion in a sense, where it's like you start peeling back layers and being like, oh wow, they do have this kind of thing here, and oh they do have that kind of thing here, and oh let's go check that out, or let's go listen to that band or get involved with this thing. So the more we're getting here, the more we've been here, the more I'm getting plugged in with all these things here and meeting people. And so far, I've met some fantastic people and had the opportunity to mix some bands around here and that kind of thing as well. So, but it's been cool, man. I mean, and like I said, I'm excited to get to know more people this side and get involved. But as I was saying, the first year of immigrating and moving to any new country, you kind of got to prioritize what you got to prioritize, and just getting on our feet has been the big priority. And within the next year, dude, I'm hoping to do a lot more with regards to that, and like go to a lot more shows. But it's been very cool so far, very very cool. But it's extremely hot here in Florida. I'll say that much. Like as far as the weather is concerned, like it's incredibly hot here. I mean, you're looking at like 35-degree weather, 100% humidity. So I would say it's like Durban in March, like all year round, so like crazy
dear
hot, and
God.
crazy humid. So I remember like when we went to go watch Korn, it was in the middle of summer, and even with like fans blowing and like all that kind of stuff, dude, it was so hot that my sensitive South African body was just like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm gonna pass out. Like I can't breathe. The humidity is just too crazy. Now I'm adapting to it, so now it's cool. Now my body's getting used to it, so I can deal with it a little bit better. But while we were watching Korn, I was just like, my goodness, I'm literally like roasting from the inside. So that takes some
Yeah,
getting used
that's
to.
like I'm trying to think now. When I was trying to adjust the Durban heat, that sounds worse than what like it's currently boiling in Durban, but it is not that bad.
Yeah, it's a different
Like,
thing, man. I mean, like Durban is like Durban is incredibly hot, but it's like you have those days where it's like rainy and a little bit cool. It's like, if you know what I mean, it's like where it's like the it'll be in the middle of summer, but you'll have like a week long period where it's just rains every day, and it's not cold, but it's not hot anymore, if you know what I mean. In
yeah,
Florida
it's not
in
like
summer,
absolutely scorching.
exactly. In Florida in summer, you don't get that. Like if it rains, if anything, it makes it hotter. So you'll like look out the window and you'll be like, wow, it's an overcast day. It's raining. It must be cold outside. And then you'll walk outside and being like, no, it really is not. It's the furthest thing from cold. So, but we're going into
I
winter now, which is beautiful. I mean, the weather here is absolutely fantastic in winter, so it's actually lovely outside, I must admit. So, which is perfect for shows. That's like the perfect weather to go to shows.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, I can't imagine getting up on the stage or getting into a mosh pit in that kind of heat.
Yeah, dude.
Like, and then especially like for yourself, saying that you're a germaphobe, that must be the most uncomfortable situation. As everyone is sweaty and just, you're breathing each other,
But
and
that's the weird thing, dude, is like being at a show, it's like that doesn't bug me, man. It's like, I mean, I think everybody in the beginning of COVID, at the very least went through a bit of a period of time where like you were hyper aware of like other people being around you and in your space and that kind of thing. But like in
yeah,
general, being at a show, it's like I love that communal feeling, and I love the whole thing of like a hot, sweaty show and all of us are in it together, and it's like everyone's holding on to everybody and headbanging together and moshing and moving and like just loving each other's company and that kind of thing. And I enjoy that. So it's a weird thing because it's like I'm a germaphobe, but there's also a cultural aspect to it where it's like when you're at a show, it's like you make peace with the fact that that's part of it, and actually like an enjoyable part of it to a degree, if you know what I mean, within reason. I've definitely been in some clubs before where it's like it's not just hot and grimy, it's like dirty. Like, it's like you can tell they haven't like mopped the floor in like a month, and like that kind of thing. I'm like, yeah, nah, not too hot on that kind of
where
thing,
your where your shoes like stick to the floor kind
Ugh.
of deal. Like,
Horrible, horrible.
okay,
But then on the flip side of that, it's like if you go to a movie house, for example, and your shoes are like sticking on the floor, it's weird. It just adds to the nostalgia in a way where it's like you want to walk into a movie house that smells like off popcorn with sticky floors and be like, yeah, we're at the movies. So I mean, I remember that with like even jamming Durban, dude. Like on that album launch tour and the previous times that we had played there, and we played there a couple times afterwards. The heat in Durban, I remember we played there a couple times in like the summer months. And I remember like in Joburg, if you're in like a super hot club, generally speaking, you can like you'll suffocate inside, and then after the show, you walk outside and you'll take like this deep breath of like fresh, crisp air and being like, and like just like you can kind of like take a deep breath and get a little bit of relief from the heat. Not so much in Durban. Like in Durban, you walk
Right.
outside and it's like, wow, it is as hot out here as it is in the freaking club. Like it's just wow. So, but I guess that's part of the fun of it, right? Is like playing shows in different environments and different, climates and that kind of thing. It's part of the fun of it. I mean, I'll never forget we played a show down in it was a place called the Rabbit Hole in Cape Town. And we were down there for I think a string of like 4 or 5 shows that we were playing in the Western Cape. And my goodness, it was night one, and that is probably to this day one of the hottest shows I've ever played in my entire life. It was the kind of thing where I was just like, I had to get like electrolyte powder afterwards and stuff like that, just because I was like, I am
Good.
literally like as dehydrated as you can possibly get because of the sheer heat of the stage. So that's always an interesting one, like those kinds of things. But then again, it adds to the vibe sometimes, right?
No, definitely. Like, honestly, I wouldn't trade like a lot of the experiences that I've had in the music scene, even like the bad ones, if you can put it that way,
Yeah, yeah,
like for anything. Like,
absolutely, dude.
I remember I've told the story a couple of times on this show, but my uncle is like a veteran, like a seasoned musician. And I remember when he
Cool.
found out that I wanted to get involved, the first thing he told me was like getting into live music is a gateway to adventure. It's not about what you want anymore. You're going to have an adventure one way or another.
Oh,
And yeah, that
100%, dude. I mean, it's one of those funny things, and I mean, like this is to your point, but maybe slightly different. Is like I was talking with friends of mine that I've known from I was in South Africa about 3 months ago. My wife and I were there for about a month, just visiting family and visiting friends, and just getting recharged and that kind of thing, and just seeing all of the people we love that side. And I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine from the scene that I've known for the last like 16 odd years, kind of thing in the music scene, and we were talking about the things that we were so fortunate to do and the places we were able to play and the people we were able to meet and like the experiences that being in a band and being a musician afforded for us. And yeah, look, there's if you're a metal band in South Africa or a rock band in South Africa and not necessarily a commercially viable artist, there is that factor where it's like, financially speaking, it's like, none of us became rich from it. Very few of us made a living playing metal full time. It's like all of us had day jobs and had other things that we were doing to support ourselves while being in bands and to support the band. And it's like fortunately Red Helen eventually got to a point where we were making enough from shows and from selling merch and that kind of thing where we could pay for our recordings out of the band and we could pay for traveling out of the band and like that kind of thing. It didn't come out of our pockets, but still it wasn't a case of being able to support ourselves. But that said, it's like you could look at that and be like, there's a certain percentage of people who would look at that and be like, well, you guys didn't make a living. That means you didn't make it. That means that like you weren't a successful band. And it's like, that depends on what your metric of success is, right? It's like the things that we got to do and the opportunities that were afforded to us in terms of experiences and people that we got to meet and places we got to go and that kind of stuff. It's like those are priceless memories that I wouldn't trade for the world, for no matter no amounts of money and no amounts of other definitions of success. It's like it was just that we just got to do the coolest things with the coolest people, and I'm so grateful for that fact. And I would do it again in a heartbeat, no problem.
Yeah, like I agree with you 100%. People have a very warped perspective of what like a successful band is. Like you're either a starving artist or you've completely made it. Like like a millionaire kind of deal. You're making money. Like that
Yeah,
perspective, like that perception is so warped as to what like success as a musician actually is. And I think it 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 taints it for like a lot of people going into it, like new musicians who especially don't know any better.
sure.
Like it could crush like dreams before they even start.
Well, that was one of the things. It's like if I had to go back and like you know it, how do I put it, like if I got offered a gig to play with another band or like sorry, I'm trying to find the wording for it. It's like
No
if
stress.
no, cool. If I had to give my younger self advice, right, it would be to kind of like, when it comes to playing in bands and being involved with the band world and that kind of thing, it would be like, set out what your expectations are. It's like, is your expectation to be the next Metallica playing to stadiums of 70,000 people every night and making millions and millions of dollars and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And if that is your expectation, then it's like, that's cool, nothing wrong with that, but then you got to take certain steps and you have to make certain sacrifices and you have to approach things a certain way to put yourself on a trajectory to reach that. Not that I think that there'll ever be another Metallica. I mean, they are a different beast all of their own, but it's all about like, what are your expectations? I mean, I know so many musicians who got fatally disappointed to the point where their bands broke up and they completely shunned music and they've stopped playing music and they don't want anything to do with music purely because they didn't reach what they would consider that like rock star status. It's like the guy who can't go anywhere without being asked for autographs and like is playing the biggest stages and getting paid the most amount of money and blah blah blah. And I don't have a problem with people having those kind of goals and aspirations, but like I say, so many people that I knew that like completely gave up on music because they didn't like achieve that. And it's like, yeah, but look what you did do. Like, look at the lives you got to like positively influence and positively affect, and the experiences and the memories you gave people, and like, the fact that you got to like, like almost use music as a type of emotional catharsis, in terms of getting your feelings out in the world and expression and like that kind of thing. And it's like, so much of the conversation is like, what are your expectations, and for me, it's like, obviously, would I have complained if we were doing this, full time and touring the world in private jets and stuff? No. But at the same time, it's like the things that we did get to, influence, and the people that we did get to like, share that part of ourselves with, it's like, it's absolutely was 100% worth it. It's like for me personally, and I know that like Greg, for example, would agree. For context, most of the lyrics that are written within Red Helen are written by Greg and myself. So a lot of the lyrics have to do with our own personal experiences and have to do with things that we struggle with, or thoughts that we have, or ideas, or like that kind of thing. And for I don't want to speak for Greg, but I know that he would agree with me that it's like, there is nothing more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like, to think that like our music and the words that we wrote and the melodies that we wrote and that kind of stuff helped people through dark times, and like helped people like get over challenges in their lives, and to feel heard, and to feel like they're not alone, and to feel like that some sort of consolement, and like to know that, I mean, we've had people contact us saying that our music helped them through periods of feeling suicidal and periods of feeling depressed and that kind of thing. And for me, it's like, no matter no matter how much money we could have made out of the band, hypothetically speaking, that is such a precious, valuable, like priceless thing to have somebody tell you that the words that you wrote positively affected them to the point where they decided to give life a second chance. You can't buy that. That's one of the most special things, and I'm so grateful for that.
No, man, that is absolutely incredible. Can I have a bit of a fanboy moment here
Oh, sure.
regarding Red Helen?
Sure.
So, uh, I often like introduce people to local music, and like, especially guys who are into heavier music but don't know that there's heavier music in South Africa. And pretty much 90% of the time, the Red Helen is on that list that I give people
Oh,
of
thank you.
bands to go check out.
I
And
appreciate that.
like,
Thank you very much.
honestly, as a guitarist myself, like I look the way I look at Eric and the way he plays is just it blows my mind even to this day.
Oh, dude, same
And
here. Yeah.
it's unfucking believable. And like, yeah, so you guys are always on that list. And I know, like, for me, on my Spotify playlist, Red Helen's there, man. Like, it's something that I regularly listen to.
That means an absolute ton, dude. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, man. Thank you very much. And if I can also say, as a guitar player myself, watching Eric play never gets old. And I take great pride in the fact that I would consider myself the worst musician in my band. You know what I mean? It's like, I am so proud. I am as big of a fan of the guys that I get to jam with as any other fan, because it's not lost on me on how absolutely fantastic they are at the instruments that they play. They're mind blowingly good, and it's like, I can't believe I get to jam with them.
Yeah, because it's you on vocals, it's Eric on guitars, it's Greg on bass, and
That's it.
Matt Sledger on drums,
Yep, yep.
and just all absolute powerhouse musicians. I also look at Greg
Thank you.
sometimes, I'm like, holy shit!
Oh, dude, Greg is stupid good, dude.
Like,
Yeah, he's just nuts, man.
man.
And he's one of those people where it's like, I mean, obviously as a bass player, he's an absolute monster. You know, it's like that right thumb of his is stupid good. But at the same
Mm.
time, it's like, dude, he's just one of those people who's like, whatever he touches, he is just fantastically good at. And he's also the kind of guy who's willing to put in the hard work to like improve at the things that he wants to improve at. You know, he's just an incredibly committed, dedicated, fantastically talented dude. And yeah, I love the dude to bits. I love all the guys that I play with to bits. They're just absolutely fantastic. But yeah, you were saying something about an outro though?
The outro to Suicide Notes and what? Suicide Notes and Bloodshot Eyes? Bloodshot Eyes?
That's
Wait,
it. Yeah.
what?
Suicide Notes and Bloodshot Eyes.
So I got like confused there for a second. There's
No
the
worries.
outro bit to that song, which just oh, it gets me every time.
It's
It's just
amazing,
such a
dude.
good piece of music. Just the way you guys layered your vocals
Thank
and
you.
just the
It,
I'm just
it's
having
a
like a
it's a song that to this day is a very 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 special song to all of us dudes, so the and certainly one of those ones that seems to resonate with our fans, which I'm super grateful, dude. And it never gets old playing that outro live for sure, because that's usually the song we would close the set with. And it was always just such a special moment for sure, man. I'm stoked you dig it, dude. That's awesome.
no, it's honestly, and then the breakdown to there's a song. Oh, no, I can't remember any of the names now that I'm having this conversation.
It's okay if you
But there's
describe
a
it to
song.
me, I'll remember it.
There's a song that has like a kind of a jazz break, and then it just goes into the fucking mother of all breakdowns.
Oh, that's
It's like
Trading
this.
Paths for Pathways. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, dude, and that breakdown never gets old, man. Never gets old. We were actually there was a period where we were like playing around with it, and we were like, we should totally do this, and like because that song's in drop D, right? So that they're playing it in D, and then on our most recent single, and certainly any of the new music that we were hoping to release in the near future, that's going to be done in drop A, 7 string vibes, right? So that's in drop A.
Ah!
So we were thinking it's like it would be pretty funny if like we did the initial breakdown and drop D, and then like at the end of the song, just like half time it and drop it down to A, and just like do like make a slam version out of it, like go full
Oh my
Velveteen.
God, that would be absolutely fucking orgasmic. I would lose my ever-loving shit.
Well, the
Like,
next time we play a show, we'll be sure to put that together, dude, for sure.
one of the things is how do you guys even keep time alive with the things that you do?
Sure.
Like, do you guys have in-ear clicks? Do you
Yes.
what like? Oh, it's just okay. So in-ear clicks, not just machines. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So we do have clicks running, and well, let me put it this way. Eric, Matt, and Greg, they have click running in their ears. So Matt has like a laptop that sits next to him by the drum kit, and we send samples to front of house and that kind of thing. So like sub booms and little glitchy things and that kind of thing. And when he triggers that, it triggers the click in all of their ears, and that's why you'll very rarely hear like a count in at a Red Helen show or something like that. It's like it usually just goes straight into the song. But with one caveat though, is I don't typically have click in my ears, and that has more to do with the fact that with how much I run around on stage, I tend to break in-ear monitors. So because I just I can't have cables attached to me, or I just tend to rip them apart. So we did take an exception with me where it was like I just wear earplugs on stage just to protect my hearing, but I'm free the whole way through as far as like click is concerned. But that's when you're playing with dudes like Greg, Eric, and Matt, it's like it's super hard to mess up on the timing, because you know that they're just going to be locked in as locked in as can be. But yeah, like I said, I've just broken one too many in-ear monitors and one too many cables, so I just stick with the microphone and earplugs personally.
Yeah, that shit's expensive.
Yeah,
Like,
totally, dude, totally. Yep, yep. And I remember there was a certain time where I believe it was Ramfest in 2020, right before COVID kicked in. And I did guest vocals with the guys from Newtown Knife Gang. I got on stage and did guest vocals with them for an
saw
old
a
school
video of this the other
60.
night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I posted up that was the Opie Copy one, but we did one at Ramfest as well, jamming the 16 Stitch track, which is a dream come true for me, right? And super cool that the guys, gave me the opportunity to. I'm super stoked about that. It's still one of the coolest things ever. And we were playing, and that night I had decided to have my in-ear monitors in, so I was running with the in-ear monitors doing it, and the freaking earpiece broke off and got stuck in my ear. So it's like, so I get off stage, and like everyone else is like hanging out and partying and that kind of thing, and I've got to freaking go to the medical tent and have somebody with tweezers pulling an ear thing out of my ear, you know. So I'm also a little bit weird about that, just because I'm like, I don't want stuff getting stuck in my ear again. But yeah, it was part of the fun of it.
Something I wanted to touch on. You do sound design as a career, right? Like that is, I've seen like a lot of the clips and stuff that
I
you've
do,
posted
yes.
of that, and it's a really like fascinating thing for me. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Sure, sure. It's actually a funny story, dude, because the fact that I got into it is deeply connected to the fact that from that I'm in a band, right? And then I come from the band world, right? So initially, so I studied contemporary popular music production and guitar at a place called the Campus of Performing Arts. That's where Eric studied as well, and that's where I met Eric. And Greg studied there as well, even though I actually had met Greg when we were 10 years old doing karate together back in the day. But we all ended up going through the same place. And part of the course that they had there was post-production audio, so which involves sound design and mixing for picture and mixing, for film and advertising and visual media and games and that kind of thing. And I always had an interest in it. I always really enjoyed doing it. It was super cool, even though I went to the music college. Because I wanted to be the next Adam D, the guy who's in the famous band, but also mixes bands on the side, which is cool. But a couple, I finished up at college, and I wanted to jump into the studio game, and I wanted to start, working in studios and that kind of thing. And trying to get people to take a chance on you, and that is very, very difficult if you don't have any experience. So years of like, assisting friends on sessions and like, sending my CV out to different studios and trying to get into different environments and that kind of thing. And very often coming against, getting no's and that kind of thing. And eventually the guys from the band Newtown Knife Gang, who were obviously originally 16 Stitch, I remember reading through their the album notes on Pestroy's album, The Enemy Within. And then I remember reading also on Newtown Knife Gang's album, just reading in the credit notes that both albums were recorded, mixed, and mastered at Audio Militia. So I was like, Audio Militia, that's interesting. What is Audio Militia? So I looked into it, and turns out it was a studio that was owned by Craig Hawkins, the lead singer of Pestroy, better known as Tripwire, and then also owned by Nick Argyris, the drummer of 16 Stitch, now Newtown Knife Gang, and Paul Norwood, guitar player for 16 Stitch, now Newtown Knife Gang. So, which obviously I was huge fans of those bands, loved those albums, and I was just like, man, these albums sound fantastic. Like I would love, love, love to learn from these guys, right? To actually like get an opportunity to learn from these guys. So I cold emailed them the one day. I got their email address, and I was like, hey guys, like if you're ever looking for somebody to work in your studio or like to assist or to help out or to work there full time, please keep me in mind. And then turns out, that they knew who I was, obviously because of Red Helen. And they were like, wait a minute, this guy's like, if he's this good in his band, maybe he'll be really good working in the studio as well. And like, working in the studio world. So we met via the actual band world. And long story short, there wasn't an opportunity at the time for me to work there. And it was just the kind of thing where for about 3 years, I stayed in contact with the guys. So if they said like, send us an email in a month, I would like put a reminder on my phone, and a month to the day, bam, I'd send them an email. And I just did my best to get my foot in that door. And when the opportunity opened up, they offered me the opportunity to work at the studio. And part of that meant that I got to learn mixing and mastering music from the guys who I wanted to learn that from. But also the other side of it was the position was actually to be a post-production mixer and a sound designer working on commercials and promos and cartoons and that kind of thing. And like I say, from college, I had an interest in it. I just didn't know if I was any good at it, or like if it was something that I would enjoy doing. But I was like, you know what? It's a foot in the door. Let's see how this goes. It's rock and roll, So got in there. Turns out that I absolutely loved it. I loved the craft of sound design and working with sound effects and creating sound effects and mixing audio for visual media. And, part of the job was also writing music for visual media. While in my time at Audio Militia, I was very fortunate that I got to write music for 8 different commercials and ad campaigns, which was really cool. For everybody from like Mahindra to KFC to, a whole bunch of really cool clients, which is awesome. And working as a sound designer there, I got to work with some massive names like, Disney and Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, and some pretty huge clients, and a very, fortunate to have been in that environment. And shout out to Richard Staub, who was the guitar player for the Did Will Tell Conqueror, currently now in the band, the Beach Boys, which is really cool. I'm sure they're going to come down to Durban sometime soon. And he was very much my mentor at Audio Militia, who taught me the ropes of sound design and taught me the ropes of final mix in that regard. And like I said, I just fell head over heels with, I feel I'm very fortunate in life that like I get to do a little bit of everything that I'm interested in. So like, playing live in a band and like being on stage and making music together and recording and working on albums and that kind of stuff. And then in my professional life, getting to be a sound designer and a composer, working with visual media and working with those kinds of people. I also do live sound on the weekends as well, and do broadcast engineering and that kind of thing. So I'm very fortunate that I get to have my fingers in many different pies and get to tickle many of the interests that I'm interested in. But when I moved to the United States, I at that point had stopped working for the guys from Audio Militia, because obviously they're a South African based company. So I sadly had to say goodbye to my time at Audio Militia, although they're still very good friends to this day. And if anybody's in Johannesburg, you should hit them up, because their new studios are absolutely gorgeous. I got to see them when I was there 3 months ago, and they're absolutely beautiful. So 100% recommend you check it out. Get a hold of Kath, the legendary Kath Grenfell, who works there as well. If you know 5FM, you'll know who Kath is. And nowadays, here in the United States, I still work full time as a sound designer, working for a company called De Facto Sound, which I started there about 2 months ago. I started working with them. I've been working freelance up until this point, and about a month and a half, 2 months ago, I was fortunate to have the opportunity to start working full time with De Facto Sound, also as a sound designer, mix engineer. And they are absolutely fantastic and have been a company that I've looked up to for many years. Their work has always blown my mind, and the fact that I get to learn from these guys and improve even more at my craft is mind-blowing to me, and I feel very, very, very fortunate. So yeah, sorry, long answer to your question.
It's amazing though. Like that's so cool. Don't ever be phased. I love long answers because content. Like
Totally.
it makes my job editing these so much easier as well. Like
100%. Well, I'm happy to provide. I'm not known for my brevity.
like tell me a bit more about some of your favorite shows as Red Helen. Like you guys have obviously played a few, but are there any that stand out as like particular like memories that just come to
Sure.
mind?
So, I mean, it's funny, like you have different shows that are memorable for different reasons, right? It's like there were shows that were like shows that are memorable because they were such good shows, and then shows that were memorable because they were such important shows in the context of like that time in your career, So undoubtedly, like the most important show that I've ever played and the most influential and the show that resulted in us growing the most, obviously in terms of our following, but also in terms of like just being musicians and like the way we approached it and like our way of viewing playing music, was obviously Wacken, when we got to play Wacken open air in Germany.
Oh shit, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, we got to do that in 2014, and that was an incredible experience in every way, shape, and form. Absolute honor. It was a total dream come true for me, because I grew up watching like the Wacken open air DVDs and that kind of thing, and the fact that we actually got to play it is just absolutely mind blowing to me. And to see, to get to see how metal and rock culture operates at the biggest metal festival in the world, and to see what it took for us to have that opportunity and like how we had to prepare for it and all that stuff. It was a very, very big influential thing for us, and like we only became a better band because of that experience, and I believe that Sash and the guys are getting ready to do the next Wacken metal battle in South Africa. I saw that they were posting about that this week, and I would highly recommend that any band enter that and like and take the opportunity, because if you get the opportunity to do it and to get to experience that, it is a once in a lifetime opportunity and a massive learning opportunity, and just soak it as much of it as you can. So that one, that would be like the most memorable with regards to like important show, right? But then the most memorable in terms of like probably being my favorite show that we've ever played, it was when we played Opi Kopi. I think it was either in 2015 or 2016, I can't remember, but that show was just insane. Like that was like, it was just mind blowing. I mean, it's to this day, it just sets such a high bar for like, how and just incredible shows. I mean, like the crowd was in it with us from like the start to finish. The vibe was fantastic. We had so much fun playing. And shout out to the monitor engineer who was mixing that day. It sounded as good on stage as it did, to everybody who was watching the stage. It was just absolutely fantastic. Our album launch tour was amazing. I loved every show we did on that. Getting to play any of the Cranked Up music festivals is always an honor, and something that was like, something we were very fortunate that we got to play, I think, every second year for a number of years. And getting to play that was always an honor. And like, most of us in the band are Alberton boys, so like, to be playing shows in our backyard, so to speak, and like to play at that particular one was always a dream come true. I mean, like I say, when I look back at a lot of the things that we got to do with regards to like playing with Monuments and playing with Tesseract and playing with Protest the Hero and playing with all those guys, it's just, I mean, when I joined the band in Red Helen, one of our goals was we want to open for Protest the Hero one day, and we want and like and my our one of our random goals that like we had no control over, but like we're like you kind of sometimes have to set these strange kind of goals. We were like, we want to play with Protest the Hero and we want them to be impressed by us. We want them to be like, oh shit, these guys are amazing. And I don't know if they felt that way about us, but we did get to play with them not once but twice, and that was an absolute dream come true collectively for us as a band. But those shows are definitely big ones, man. But I mean, we were so fortunate that we got to play so many cool shows with so many cool bands, and like I just have so many fond memories of doing that, and can't wait to do that again sometime in the future for sure.
No, that statement's so funny with I want to open for them and we want them to be impressed by us. I love that.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure they were. Like,
I hope so.
I don't think anyone's gonna go to a Red Helen show and not be impressed. Like, it's
Thank you.
I might just be like a fanboy in that sense, but like as a musician myself, just how everything comes together, just the execution live, your overall fucking performance, like you're
Thank you.
a fantastic front man. It's so
Thank you
entertaining
so
watching
much.
you. And
I appreciate that. Thank you.
you've also done something with one of my other favorite local bands, and that is Yumi and the Harmony.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. Love those guys.
Like, that is also your contribution to that song is fantastic too. I love that as well.
Thank you so much. I'm super honored to have been a part of it, man. And they're still very dear friends to this day. We're very fortunate to know those guys. I mean, we they were at my wedding, and it's like Carl, the guitar player, has been one of Greg's best friends for many, many years, and like we're just super fond of that entire group of people. They're all fantastic.
No, definitely. Carl is a funny human. I love that man.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. I remember when I first met that guy, I was working at Marshall Music in Johannesburg South when I was like 14, 15, something like that. And Carl came running into the shop and he was like, hide me, hide me. And I was like, what does that mean? What do you mean hide me? So like he kind of like, we hit him around the thing, and apparently he was running away from some chick that he was like flirting with, and she was like chasing him, and like it was this whole big thing. And so that was my first introduction to Carl, was like when we were like 14, 15, and he was hiding behind a table trying to get away from some girl that was chasing him for whatever reason. So it's kind of funny like looking at him nowadays.
I want to ask him about this.
Totally. And obviously he's playing for Dirty Moonshine and all those guys nowadays.
Yeah,
He
plays bass as well. Look for Dirty Moonshine.
Yeah. Well, what's really cool is like the old bass player for Dirty Moonshine is a guy called Dave Friedman, and Dave's a very dear friend as well. And I've known that guy probably since I was like 15. I was a huge fan of his band back in the day called Asai, and then after Asai, he started a band called Is That Blood, and I freaking loved that band. Like I was like nuts about those dudes. I still have my Is That Blood t-shirt to this day. It's like I have never, every single t-shirt I've ever bought from a South African band I still own, to this day, and I still own their t-shirt. And so with him playing in Dirty Moonshine, I mean, he like my very first band, Dave was the guy who got us our first ever show. So the first ever show I ever played was as a result of him. So it's super cool now looking at that, like, fast forward a couple of years and he's playing in Dirty Moonshine and we're playing shows together. And, obviously he's very involved with like designing flyers for shows and that kind of thing. And that's the cool thing, right, about the South African music scene is like so many of us have known and played together for so many years. It's this beautiful community and this awesome like camaraderie between everybody. I mean, there was a certain point in the South African music scene where there was quite a lot of competition and everyone was trying to one up everybody, and it kind of felt like everyone had the scarcity mentality where like we're all trying to like vie for the same like opportunities and for the same stuff and like the same slots and the same shows and the same everything. And that kind of caused a bit of animosity between certain people. And like when you're young, there's this stupid competitiveness that you sometimes get when you're in a band where it's like, no, our band needs to be the biggest band, that kind of thing. And as you get older, and like you built relationships with these people for so long and you played shows, it's like all that crap sort of falls away, dude. And it's like you come to realize that it's like you're a community at the end of the day, and it's like a rising tide raises all ships, and we're in this together. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things is like certainly until COVID kicked in, and I think it's still a case now, there's way more of a sense of camaraderie in the South African scene where it's like we're there to support one another, and I think that that's fantastic.
My introduction to Cole was asking him for a power supply for a pedal at a gig. That was how I met him because my band had forgotten one. Uh,
Oh, that's fun.
like
That's fun.
we immediately liked them because the band that I was in was also a female fronted band.
Cool.
We were a band called Running for a Full Moon, and we played a couple
Nice.
of shows with Yumi and the Harmony, and like I remember looking up to them for like the longest time, and
Oh, that's
still
fantastic.
even to this day, Carl's just I love that dude. And
Good band to look up to, man, for
it's
sure.
so interesting to hear you like you say stories like all of these guys I've heard of. Like I've spoken to Dave, because I've interviewed Dirty Moonshine as well,
Oh, sick.
and
Awesome.
so I've had chats with Dave, I've had chats with Carl, and it's so interesting to like hear these stories from these type of things of how long you guys have known each other and how interconnected you are. Because through all of these chats, I had no idea about this, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, on the outside, it looks like all of us, because we play different genres of music and because we have very different vibes and that kind of thing, that we're all like, very separate from one another. But like the music game is a small game, dude, as far as like people, knowing one another and being connected to one another and being friends with one another. And it's a very, very small scene. And like in some ways you can look at that as a bad thing, but I see that actually as a very, very good thing. It's like that. I love, I mean, on our most recent single that was released, it's a song called Become the Wind. And on that track, we have a buddy of ours from a South African gospel group called the Muffins, who in the African gospel scene are absolutely freaking huge. Like they are massive in the African gospel scene. And he is one of the most talented, wonderful human beings. He's still one of my favorite people ever. The dude, his name is Sims Cooler. What's up, Sims, if you're listening? And he's just the coolest guy ever. And I love the fact that it's like anybody who checks out that track would probably find it so strange that a metal band is doing a freaking track with a guy from a gospel group. And it's like we're doing the song together. And it's like I don't think most people would know that we even know each other, never mind the fact that we're making music together. And I just think that's awesome. Like I think that's the coolest thing, is like throwing the preconceived notion that it's like just because it's a different genre or culture or style or whatever the case, it's like no, like it's like music is music, man. It's like musicians of all kinds and all backgrounds have more in common than they don't have in common. And I just think that that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, musicians always have that common ground through music, like irrespective of what genre you make.
Absolutely, dude.
Like because
I
there's
mean,
so
I
many
think there's
things
an
that relate.
unhealthy, totally, dude. And I think that there's an often unhealthy idea in the metal community where people are like, if it's not metal, it sucks, or like it needs to be metal or true metal or true cult or whatever whatever phraseology people want to use. And that's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with people having very specific ideas of like the music that they like and what they constitute as good music in terms of their own personal music taste. But excuse me, I think the mark of somebody who is like a true musician is somebody, even though you may not necessarily like a genre of music, even though you may not necessarily want to listen to said genre of music, but there is a point at which as a musician you can appreciate good music that is challenging to make, or like something that takes a lot of hard work, a lot of practice. You can look at that and appreciate it for what it is as a musician, even if that's not the kind of music you would personally make or listen to. if you know what I mean.
100%,
It's like
100%
there's
agree.
many genres of music that I'm not a fan of personally, as in I wouldn't put it on while I'm driving around. It's like that's not what I'm going to listen to. But I can recognize the fact that it's a difficult genre to pull off, that it takes a lot of freaking practice, that it takes an understanding of that genre that I don't have, and that it takes talent and time and hard work. And I think that, like I said, dude, musicians have more in common than we don't have in common. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. And like I said, I think that in many ways helps cross cultures and ideas. And I think the beauty of music is at the end of the day, it brings us closer together, dude. And I think that that's an awesome thing.
I do find though that if you're listening to one type of music, especially as a musician, you're severely limiting yourself.
Oh
Like,
yeah, I
but like you
agree.
said, by all means, there's nothing wrong with having a specific taste. But like, I agree 100% with what you said. Like, you can appreciate music, even if it's not something that you would go out of your way to listen to. Like, I have found absolute bangers in the most random of things that I would not have ever dreamed I would listen to. Because I used to be quite a
Totally,
snob.
dude.
As being younger, like being a snob about I only listen to this if it's a certain level of brutal.
Oh,
And
sure, sure. Although
now
I think all of us went through a certain stage when we were younger where that was the thing, dude.
I am more brutal than you, but I'm the most vanilla looking dude. Like even now, like I'm like no people and I work at a bank on top of it all. So like I look like the most
Rad.
like chill dude. I've never dyed my hair. My tattoos are always covered most of the time. So when people see me out in the scene, they're like, what the fuck? Like
That's awesome, dude. Well, I always, funny enough, have that reaction from people. I mean, look, obviously, like I have the long hair and I have all that stuff, and like I think you can quite easily pick me out as like somebody who's very likely in a band if you saw me walking in the street. But like at the same time, the funniest thing is when people meet me before and after being on stage and then like see me on stage, or like I've had situations where I've been with like pretty big like corporate clients working on a project in the sound design world, and they see me in a specific way while I'm working with them in the studio, and then someone, my colleague of mine or somebody, will show them like a Red Helen video, like a music video or a live video or whatever. And one of my favorite things is seeing them struggling to compute, like, how is this the same person? How are you the same guy on stage? I mean, I'll never forget, I had a thing where I met a fan at a show, and he was like talking to me. I noticed that he kept looking at me strange, right? He kept like looking at me in a way of like I was some sort of extraterrestrial or something. And I was like, "You're good, dude. Like, is everything all right?" And he was like, "Yeah, I just can't believe that's what your normal voice sounds like." And it was like, and I was like, "Well, what did you think it was going to sound like? That I was going to like sound like that
like
all the time?
fucking
Like,
like Maurice from fucking Big Mouth. Like, yeah, no,
yeah,
guys, like
right, right." So that is part of the fun of it, dude, is it's like the stage persona, or like the alter ego of being on stage versus like who you are off stage. And to be fair, I see my stage persona, if you want to put it that way, as just a very exaggerated version of me anyways. It's like me completely unhinged in a sense. And it's like being the front man of a band, it's like I've always seen it as like my responsibility as a front man is to make a room that is so big feel a quarter of the size. Like you want that room to feel like it's filled. You want that room to feel like everyone's in it together. You want the person at the back to feel like they're as important to the show as what the person right in front is. And yeah, I hope in some way I've achieved that. But that's always been my goal, is like, you want people to feel like they are as part of the show, as in the vibe as possible. Yeah, if that makes any sense.
It makes 100% sense. Mine is just I'm just happy to be there. Like people have often pointed
Totally.
out that I look like the band will be so Thorns is defined at this point as a groove metal band. It's heavy, but it's also
Rad.
groovy, and like it'll be like something like a breakdown or super brutal, and people just comment of I just look like the happiest man alive. Like
That's brilliant. I love that. I love that. That's fantastic, dude. Well, that was one of the funny things, right? Is like when we moved to the United States, when my wife and I moved here, it's like it was very much in the peak of COVID. So one of our big things that I was very disappointed about when we moved overseas was that we never got to actually have like a a farewell for now Red Helen show before I moved overseas. So like I say, that's not to say that there won't be Red Helen shows in the future. We very much hope that there will be. And, when the stars align, we'd love to do a South African tour. And it's like, those are all things that are still very much on the page and very much on it will happen in the future at some point. I can't say when, but it will happen, right? But one of our big regrets was that we never got to do a farewell show. And I never, at that point, because shows just weren't happening, I couldn't even go and see some of my friends' bands and be like, have like a final hurrah before, making the move. So the first show that we went to this side, it was Korn and Stained. And then a bunch of other really cool bands that were playing with them. But my brother and I went to go watch, and obviously like Stained is like much like Nickelback. They're one of those bands that everyone likes to rag on and blah blah blah. I still love their music. I don't care what people's perception is of them. I think they're great. But I'll never forget, we were sitting there and the first Stained song kicked in, and I have no shame in saying that I freaking teared up and wept like a baby, just because I was like, it is so freaking good to be in this environment again. It is so good to feel live music and hear people singing along to music that they love, and to be in this live music space and to see musicians expressing themselves. And like I just straight up was like a little baby about it. I was like, this is just the best freaking thing ever, and I'm so happy to be back in this environment again.
No, I can completely agree with that. I remember going to the first show again, feeling a kick in my chest, and just,
oh dude, the best,
man. It was a feeling that I didn't realize how much I would miss having it taken away. But just that
totally.
that presence of like just the vibe, the music, just how you feel
totally,
feel
dude.
it in your chest. There's just something else about it entirely. But Brandon, on that note, we've been chatting for a while.
Oh cool, yeah, yeah,
Where can people find you on social media? Where can people find Red Helen? And yeah.
sure. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously Red Helen has all of our social media pages. So we have, our Instagram page, our Facebook page. You guys can check us out on there. We're a little quiet at the moment, but I can guarantee you that just because we're quiet on like the outside doesn't mean that we're not busy internally. I can confirm that we are working on new music and we have new things coming up. So it might be a while still till you see us live, but there is a lot of cool stuff coming up in the pipeline. So keep an eye out for that. As far as I'm concerned, yeah, just you can also same place, hit me up on Facebook, hit me up on Instagram, just so you guys are aware. Greg is an acoustic artist as well in his spare time, so he has acoustic tracks out that you can check out. Eric does super cool like loop pedal covers of things, so you can check that out as well. He's got Eric Gabber music that you can check out. So yeah, on all good social media sites, and obviously our album and singles are available wherever music is streamed. So check it out and share the love. Oh yeah.
Fantastic. Brandon, thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat with me. I
Thank you
really
for having me,
appreciate
my
it.
man. I appreciate it, dude.
I've been
Thank you.
dying to have this chat for the longest of times. And like I said,
I'm honored to be on it, man.
Fanboyed a little bit knowing when Has messaged me about it. I was pretty excited.
Oh, dude, the pleasure and the honor is all mine, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
Shot, man. Thank you so much for taking the time.
I don't think I'll ever be the same. You took a piece of me and I'll never get back. You'll never get it back. Your hope is lost, and I don't think I'll ever be the same. Ever be the same. They're calling my name over and over. They're calling me out. These voices of sorrow speak louder than my thoughts. I'll need to find something to light the way ahead. Oh! Waste of sunshine, God and aces. No! The moment we found you, everything turned black. I just started to wither, and the shadows are darkened. As the drawing of me touched the earth, the world seemed inanimate. But then a shade of green struck through, and everything turned back.
bloodshot eyes aside. We're exactly where we're meant to be. Turn away from the darkness that's inside. Smiles